morning, good evening, or good afternoon to everybody, depending on the place where you connect. Sorry, because probably you are seeing this after we have to record it due to several or some issues with the infrastructure in connected with LinkedIn Live. So anyway, we'll attend any of your questions during the retransmission or later if you need. So welcome to our webinar and our session regarding open source malware or malware in open source packages. We are doing this session because, as you know, 90% of the modern applications has open source components. This is very beneficial due to the cost efficiency, innovation, flexibility, but it also introduces some risk in the security or from the security point of view. As we can see, huge in growth in the malware attacks targeting open source security, 633% in the previous year, and is doubling each year we move forward. So even this year we are expecting also achieve 500,000 of attacks in these kind of packages. We have recent samples like the XSET backdoor that expose critical vulnerabilities, and I think that was a very good example of the urgency to manage this kind of attacks. Okay, today we are going to try to illuminate a bit these kind of issues, provide some understanding about trends, solutions, and other things. And for that, I count with the support of three fantastic speakers that are experts in this area. First, let me introduce Derek Fisher, that has more than 25 years of experience in hardware, software, and cybersecurity, particularly in healthcare and finance areas. Okay, he has led numerous incident response effort, has been director of high-performing teams, and has developed several courses and training programs on threat modeling and application security. I would like to remark also that he has some awards as author of children books of online safety. Is also with us Abhilasha Sinha, that is a solution architect with more than 20 years of experience also in several technologies and domains. He's co-author of a book on JavaScript for modern web app development and has a lot of experience in artificial intelligence, data science, data engineering, and the application development also. And finally, is with us also Luis Rodriguez, is CTO of Cygeni and is co-founder also of Cygeni Security. And he has played a key role in the several successful cybersecurity companies. Okay, so thank you, every of you, to be here today. With this board of experts, I'm sure that we are going to have an insightful session today. So just to start and put in some context, I would like to start talking about the reliance on the open source security and the third-party components that is growing in the last times. And I would like to know or to talk about the vulnerabilities in these components and how they can far-reaching consequences due to this growth of using external components. You can speak when you consider. Please interact as much as you like. Okay, so feel free to contribute in any moment. So just to start, really, Derek, based on your experience on cybersecurity strategy, incident response, and third-party and open source component, how do you see these malware attacks and this evolution of the impact of malware attacks regarding the open source security?
Yeah, thanks for having me on here. Really appreciate the opportunity. So when we look at open source software, as you mentioned, Jesus, early on, is that we integrate these tools or these libraries and these packages into our overall software product, right? You have a application that you want to build. The goal is to not recreate the wheel So you often use these libraries to pull in to do common functionality that you don't want to have to recode. So these open source packages, they're extremely helpful to build that overall application and to enable features much more rapidly than what you would do if you had to code it yourself. But with that comes a lot of baggage, and so you're 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 giving trust to a third party in the sense that you're offloading that coding effort to a third party. And in some cases, there's third parties that support that third party. So now you have these direct dependencies and indirect dependencies on those packages that you pull in. And so each one of those creates a bit of a chain to get that functionality into your application. And so while that's helpful for you to build that overall application that you're trying to deliver in your environment and to your customers, those chains that are uh, bringing that feature to the customers could be full of holes, and some of it may be unintentional, some of it may be self-inflicted, in the sense that some libraries, as they age, if you are not keeping up with it, you're running older versions of software that potentially has vulnerabilities in it. And in some cases, attackers are looking to actually compromise those packages that you're using because they know that all they have to do is compromise that one package in order to compromise your application, and not just yours, but every other company or organization that's utilizing that package in their application. So you mentioned XC Utilities, which happened about a month or two ago. That was an example of where that package was being used, everywhere basically. In so that it becomes a what we call a force multiplier in the sense that you compromise one package, you have a much broader reach. So.
Sorry, Avilasa. Thank you, Derek. I was saying Avilasa. Derek has mentioned, for example, that there is attackers. Malicious code could be something intentional or not. Uh, According to your experience, for example, how how the attackers has changed their behavior or has they evolved their behavior in the last years regarding trying to introduce this software or this code in these components.
Right. Yes. So basically, as Derek mentioned, like the way the structure of open source is that it is built on the trust culture, and there is a lot of dependency. But then we really cannot do without it. As you mentioned, like 90% of the applications are actually uh, open source, which we do not know from where it is coming, who is supporting, and that's where the vulnerability is there. And then obviously people are sitting out, like the threat actors who are looking for such vulnerabilities, the weak link which can be exploited. So it's just a matter of one library which can actually cause such havoc. So, and the way the things have become more sophisticated, uh, the work has become easier for them because they also are making use of automation, they are also making use of AI, and their attack is more sophisticated. And of course, there are other approaches like social engineering, where they slowly get into. So, the last example of the XC, how the attacker was actually involved in the open source contribution as a trustworthy user, and how and when the threat got introduced. So that's what, like, the vulnerability is huge, and the that's where the attacks have also increased. The occurrence has increased because uh, there is a like a intentional set of people who are looking for these opportunities, I would say.
And if I could
Thank you
just
very much.
add to that, I think that early, I don't want to say early, but years ago, it was a lot of typo squatting, trying to, replace hashes or not replace hashes, but replace packages and
Obvious.
assume that, checksums weren't being actually validated. Now, like we've been talking about with the XC issue, the XC utilities issue, and also there was a issue with PHP with their Git server, where you're seeing more of direct attacks against the maintainers, and not attacks against maintainers, but basically getting to impersonate a maintainer, or getting to become a maintainer of those open source packages. Because what better way of being able to modify the open source code than actually being somebody who's responsible for managing that code. So it's kind of like a Trojan horse style type of attack, where now you're on the inside, you're able, you're trusted, you're a user or a maintainer of that open source package, you're trusted by the community. And while we're seeing examples of malicious activity around that, I think that's going to increase.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. This, at the end, it seems that everything based on the trust on the provider of the component. So I think this is even, I don't know, Luis, for example, this could pass as a hidden vulnerability because I trust, so I don't think that I'm going to be attacked by the third party, or I'm going to have some issue with this code. How this impact in the organizations that probably are too much trusty in these components or not, and how they could prepare probably for this, or how they can realize that this is a actual threat.
Well, I mean, that's also true if you think about enterprise software, where you have development teams creating this software and application that goes out to a client. You'd never, I shouldn't say never, but most organizations trust their developers to do the right thing. And although we have a lot of tools in place to validate whether there's security vulnerabilities, not many organizations, and again, there are some that do this, but not many organizations have an insider threat program to say, hey, are my internal developers, can they be trusted? So I think that it's an issue with development of software where we just implicitly trust those that are creating that software, assuming that they don't have ill intent. And we focus a lot of time looking at the accidental issues in terms of vulnerabilities and defects and things like that, but we're not always focused on the malicious activity from an insider. Luis, you're on mute.
We can your.
Okay. I agree with you totally, because in the past I was more I have a comfortable position, a comfortable stance. I was chasing for vulnerabilities with a static analysis technology for looking for any flaws, any defects that unintentionally developers put in the source code or in the configurations. And this is quite different to be focused on malware, on malicious activity. And when we started in the past, we were watching the bullfight from the sidelines. Okay, como we say in Spanish, ver los toros desde la barrera. This is comfortable. You emit a lot of vulnerability report saying that this point there is a SQL injection or something like that, and you don't see the real attacks. But now, when you focus on the actual malware, you are looking at the eyes, at the bad actors' eyes, and you understand what are the techniques and which are the things they are trying to gain. This is an industry, an ongoing industry. It said that it has the GDP of Germany, and it's growing a lot. So I think that only when you go to the trenches and see what the bad guys, the bad actors are doing, you begin to understand that this is a real problem, a much larger problem that many organizations think it's. So I think that the organizations are starting to move from vulnerability-based to malicious malware oriented. So they are more focused on intentional malicious activity. Probably the internal guys are. This is a threat that is not properly. I think also I agree with Derek. Is not properly managed. But obviously, there is a lot of activity. There is a background noise, a lot of typo squatting. You mentioned, Derek. Typo squatting is yet happening at a big pace. But there's we call this anchovies. These a lot of we see some 2,000 typo squatting packages per week. This is noise because they are trying to fish some worry developers that put the wrong name in the dependency. But under this background noise, there are quite a few sharks, real malware, real sophisticated malware that is trying to gain, probably using existing projects, not new ones that are created on the road for gaining that phishing activity. And I think that this is the real problem. The real problem is not the phishing, the TP squads, but the real thing that are under this noisy activity. And the second question is, I think, is longer to answer. Is the how to maybe we can later return to it.
You mentioned you talk about squatting and trust, for example, and this kind of thing. We mentioned at the beginning also the example of XZ backdoor. Okay, that is something that is quite recent, and probably this is one way of doing the things in the new way, attacking the trust. Probably I don't know if you want to say something regarding this sample and how these components are vulnerable to these new types of entering in the open source packages, not using typo squatting. That seems something simple, let's say, but this also is more elaborated and has a different approach. Okay, more close to the trust, not an error or something like that. I don't know who wants to provide something in that line. For example, how
For me, it's a masterclass on hacking, because it combines a lot of techniques. It combines patience in the social engineering, because that Giatan guy or persona, fictitious fake identity, was 2 years waiting for the moment, the opportunity to put the key commits. He was patiently doing neutral or even positive contributions to the project, and he found the opportunity moment when it was good. He gained maintainer role in the project, and then he made the key changes. It was basically a couple of commits. They use this. This is an APT for sure. An APT is an advanced persistent threat. They use another contributor for making a small change that was key also for enabling this malware, this backdoor. And the change was not done in the repository, in the code repository. In the code repository, there were just 2 testing files, which included the backdoor, but it was compressed because this is a compression library. Okay, and it's amazing how it was the stealth and the cunning of the attack. How they leverage all the trust in the open source community, and how they even reached some distributions, Linux distributions, but in the experimental or per-release stage, and not in the last in the production one, in final one. Otherwise, the problem would be huge. But it was quickly detected by accident, mostly by accident, and due to the way the open source published new versions on the stable distributions, we saved ourselves. I think this is my summary on that.
No, it's very good because it's, as Avilasa mentioned it before, is social engineering just to gain the trust, and in the precise moment, I put the attack there. But and you mentioned also, Avilasa, something regarding usage of artificial intelligence or large language model to generate these attacks. You are close to that technology. How do you see the evolution of this, of usage of these technologies to provide these attacks or these things?
Yeah, to start with, what I think is, we all know that LLMs are powerful. We are using ChatGPT for our own good, and that's where these threat actors who are actually, it's not one person, it's a group which is actually planning and doing such kind of activities, because obviously the way it was conducted, it looks like a state sponsored thing, or I don't know. So basically, so these people are actually also building their own LLMs. So there is a fraud LLM, there is a worm LLM, which actually is a specialist in building malware or generating malware, right? So just as AI is improving and helping us in our regular activities, it is helping in malware creation with more dynamic nature of the malware, which say dynamically adjusts and becomes more adaptive to the correction, and is able to like consistently produce the threat, or also sometimes real time it changes and adjusts to the environment. So also we see that this is the attacks are evolving in the way that you have ransom as a service, which I was recently reading about. So there are groups offering this as a service where anybody can go in and buy it like any other SaaS model, and trigger the attack on any individual or any organization. So the amount of stress, the threat is huge, and on the other side, of course, there is more power to us also from the positive side, where we can maybe have more automated replication of the behavior and try to say maybe replicate new malware, get more ready for such attacks, maybe some kind of proactive defense mechanisms which can be built with the help of AI, or plain simple anomaly detection like the normal predictive analytics, the traditional AI being used for detecting anomalies and behaviors which should be alerted and then reviewed. So from both sides of this coins, you can see that AI has brought in the acceleration and the power to the community, both negative and positive. It's how we use it, and we do it for the best of the society. That's all I can say.
No, it's more than fantastic. Thank you very much, Avilasa. You have mentioned, I think, two very important things: more proactivity to detect this kind of attacks, more automation, detecting anomalies. Thing we have in the workflow development, we integrate a lot of measures to control other vulnerabilities, probably. And probably today we are not putting or taking enough attention to malware. So how could we introduce or integrate these malware detection capabilities in the workflow development, just to detect at the beginning, or more to the left possible? I don't know how to say. How do you see this part? Luis, Avilasa, would you prefer?
Yeah, I mean, we have
Or
the
there?
concept in software development as shift left, right? That's what
Mhm.
everyone calls it, right? I think a lot of us in the in the product security and application security space have been trying to stop using that term and just say shift everywhere because we've made this huge effort to to shift left for so long that I think we're kind of losing sight of what's actually important. So while we want to detect vulnerabilities, early on as early as possible, one of the things that I think we're all looking at today is more making sure that we have actionable information about those vulnerabilities. So, we if you run a product security or an application security team, you're gonna integrate a bunch of different tools, and you're going to be pounded with results. If you have a static analysis tool, you have an SCA tool, you have a dash, you're getting pen test done. You have a secret scanner, you have all these different scanners and tools in place to detect issues early on in the development lifecycle. You're going to get, depending on the size of your code base, you're going to get dozens, hundreds, thousands of results out of those tools. Well, your development team's not going to fix hundreds or thousands of vulnerabilities when they still have features to deliver. So what I think a lot of the industry is looking towards is how do we ensure that the information that is coming out of these tools is quality, is something that's actionable, and something that we can give to the developer and say, okay, yeah, you have 100 vulnerabilities that we've identified through this tool, but only 5 of them are really relevant. Focus on those 5. And we spent a lot of time up until the recent past on focusing on critical. We say, okay, well, we have out of 100 vulnerabilities, 5 of them are critical. Let's just go tackle those. And even that's becoming a little bit of to use a term in America, ham-fisted, meaning that it's not very precise. It's just like we're gonna, we're sticking to this line. We're gonna go do this, and I think we're starting to come to the realization that even that's not a great path forward. We have to figure out, are these vulnerabilities actually something that is going to be exploited in a production environment by a bad actor? And that really narrows down the scope to what is truly actionable when it comes to resolving vulnerabilities.
I was actually where I was asking more because we talk about vulnerabilities and having information about vulnerabilities. But the thing is, we are having new ways of attacks, more complex attacks, engineering, and probably more attacks than vulnerabilities because for each vulnerability that is discovered, probably there are more than one package trying to exploit it. And in the traditional solutions or the traditional dust or pen testing probably are based on information that is published in some place. We can use known information. I don't know if it's enough, or malware needs additional capabilities to work or to detect unknown malware attacks or these kind of things. Just to was my point to complement this all these solutions, the pen testing, dust, SAST, composition analysis, and traditional point of view, this kind of things. So
There is a new attributes that are looked for vulnerabilities. For example, the reachability and the exploitability. This is difficult to to explain, but basically, is this vulnerability really exploitable? Is reachable from the way I am using that library? This is not easy to do, but this context is really needed to limit to the real ones, to the real thing. I think that the industry is progressing on that way. Okay.
Yeah, I've actually written about that recently about exploit or reachability, exploitability, because in my experience in working in application security and product security, a lot of times when you find a vulnerability, you find a critical vulnerability, you go to the development team, you say, hey, this needs to be resolved. They spend half a day or a few hours or whatever trying to determine, is this actually going to be in a production environment that's going to be reachable by an attacker? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. either that package never even makes it to production, or it's in a environment that never is accessible to anybody, let alone across the anonymous internet. So there's a lot of different context that needs to be understood about those vulnerabilities to say, is this really going to be exploited by an attacker? So yeah, to your point, Luis, the exploitability, whether you're looking at EPSS or the reachability, which a lot of tools are starting to integrate, that certainly goes a long way into really narrowing down that scope of what needs to be tackled.
There is another interesting thing is the balance between the principles or the main the best practices. For example, I mentioned one simple example. You have the thing of a patch early, patch often. This is a best practice. Everybody tries to follow it with more or less success, but this is dangerous for malware because if you keep the versioning system in the dependencies, you keep it open, you get for example minor versions open, they will get the fixes, the vulnerability fixes immediately automatically, and you have no control. So if the malware that component has a malware version up in the version numbering, you get the malware. So you have to balance. You have to keep fixed the version, which is named version pinning,
Right.
but at the same time you have to upgrade because you need that vulnerability fixes. So you have to do fixes quickly, but in a controlled way, not automatically. And this is a more complex than one thing because there are a lot of software in the organizations, and there is a lot of work. And any contribution, any ideas for making this much easier for the people could be very interesting for to avoid both problems, the vulnerability problem and the malware problem.
Yeah, but just I would like to add, like, there are some tools which are actually providing a kind of mapping of like the safe, uh, you can say safe libraries, so that the vulnerabilities are taken care of. Like recently, I happened to read about Docker Scout. So basically, see, in a regular development environment, we would want to have the proper CI/CD in place, where every development fix is going with the proper all kinds of scanning, security related scans, right? So there, if we can have something which can say automatically check for the common vulnerabilities and provide a fix as easy as a click of a button, so that at least for the common known things we can be taken care of, and that becomes seamless in the process of the CI/CD. So, as they say, the DevSecOps principle, bringing security into DevOps. So that is another like important element when we want to like make people aware of the security, the importance of security in application development, and make it easily available for them, so that they can like absorb and make it as a practice. Because yeah, because of the threats we are discussing, it has to be made seamless. That's where I think these tools will come handy.
Derek gave an adjective, actionable. I think this is the key, key
Yeah.
thing.
Yep.
Just to move a bit forward, this is a growing concern for the companies and probably for the government and other organizations. How do you see the movement on regulation or recommendations, or the action from these responsible to push the companies to protect against these attacks?
I can just speak, from the U.S. Side.
Mm-hmm.
We've had our current administration has done a lot of effort in trying to tighten up the U.S. cybersecurity strategy. There's been a lot of executive orders that have been provided, and really those just ensure that federal organizations follow a certain pattern and a certain guidance. And so we have had executive orders that touch on supply chain security, which works in the the third party software management realm. And I think what you're going to see with that is a continuation of those types of efforts that are really going to try to provide more transparency around security practices, so that organizations right now, mostly on the federal level, but that's going to ripple down into the private sector as well. More alignment around at least bare minimum security practices. And a lot of times, like when those of us that are in the security space see these things, whether it's executive orders or frameworks and all that come out, and you look at it for the first time, it says, like Luis said, patch early, patch often, have, robust security awareness, MFA. Like, it's all, to those of us that work in security, it's like, yeah, I mean, that's bare minimum, entry, barrier to entry type of security practices. But I think, again, you're going to see more alignment around those security practices, but also ratcheting them up, making them more complex and making them a little bit more rigid to ensure that we have a better cybersecurity strategy. Here in the U.S., we had it was the Colonial Pipeline attack. Maybe, I'm trying to remember, it was like 2 years ago. Basically, the oil production, was shut down in the southeast of America. That was huge here. So, and that was related to supply chain, types of attacks. So I think that really was a wake-up call for the United States to say, we got to get our stuff together here and really at least bring everybody up to a bare minimum standard and make sure that we're all adhering to that.
Maybe I can give some ideas on the EUA regulation. In Europe, things are a bit different because there are many independent states, and we are also under the umbrella of the EU. But the EU takes slowly steps, baby steps. The Americans are much more efficient in that.
Now, that's not saying a whole lot, because our government's not really efficient either. So
okay, but in Europe you have to pass the filter of the government, the EU government, or something like that, and the regulation is quite has to accommodate the national regulations from every single state member. So. We are a bit back on regulation, mainly in the supply chain security. And what you see, there is obviously the ISO standards, for example, ISO 272, which has a control, the control 8.7, I remember, has a special provision on malware, on how to react to malware. Obviously, you can translate all that to malware distributed via open source components, which is what we're talking today. But you have to adapt that terms to the thing about malicious packages, which is not easy to do. And we have, for example, the new regulation in mandates, the NIS2 regulation mandates disclosure of security incidents. But this is like saying nothing, because you have the obligation to do that, but under which circumstances? There is a lack of specific regulation telling exactly to the organizations what should be done in that particular case, on that particular case. We have a very, very ambiguous regulation, I think. This is the idea.
Thank you very much. We are running out of time, so yes, quickly to finish, probably, to talk about your view or your vision on the future and evolution of the malware attacks, protection mechanisms, and these kind of things. Just a couple of minutes for each of you, just to provide your thoughts on that. who wants to start? Probably Avilasha.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so I would just like to conclude with the thought that we all need to realize that security is important and it's not optional. So, like organizations need to budget on security in every aspect of their application and be up to date with open source dependencies as much as possible.
Thank you.
Yeah, and again, I appreciate the time that you've provided for this. So, um, I think it comes down to trust. And one of the things that I was envisioning in my head while we were talking earlier is that if you watch like movies, the bad guy's always trying to get like a security guard outfit or something if he's trying to break into a building, or he's trying to become the cop or a security guard or something like that, because there's implicit trust in those types of environments. You see somebody like that and you're going to trust it, trust that person. So same thing with open source software. We provide a lot of implicit trust to those packages, and I think the overall goal is to treat it as if the same way we talk about zero trust in personas. There should be a zero trust mantra as it comes to open source software, where we have the ability to sandbox and be able to isolate those types of packages away from critical data or critical functions. It's a lot harder to do in practice, and not enough time in this podcast to talk about that. But that's definitely at least something to part with here, is figure out or at least think about ways that you can isolate those packages to ensure that it's not going to be a critical failure to your system.
Thank you very much, Derek.
And on my side, just to thank Jesus for the opportunity for talking here. I will answer your first question, which is the best way to prepare for this threat. There are different approaches. Our approach, for example, is based on the early detection, on malware early detection, which is not easy because you have to continuously monitor what are the new versions of packages published in the public repositories, in the open source repositories, and you have to scan every change to detect, to capture together evidence of potential malware. Then after you get that with it must be an automated thing. Probably Abhilasha could help with that, because it's something that could be helpful using AI or machine learning tools or systems. You put in quarantine this specific version of maybe a well-known component, but which seems to have changed which behavior is providing. Instead of connecting to the normal IPs, is starting to connect to a different one. So this is an example of an anomaly that could, Abhilasha.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, I was just saying. Yeah, that is, as you mentioned, it's an anomaly, right?
Yeah, an anomaly. The problem with anomalies is that you can raise false positives, and you cannot do that if your build is depending on third-party dependencies and you break the build. If false positive is completely so you can have the notification, the quick notification in a matter of minutes that you have a potential problem. Okay, you may perhaps wait for a more decent notification after manual review. The manual review should be done in a few minutes, in a quarter of an hour or in an hour at most. So it must be quick. And then you have a confirmed malware. With this confirmed malware, you block the build and you try to remove the dependency, the malicious dependency, going probably downward in the versioning path. And you notify the public registry that this version has potential malware. They take a lot of time to remove the malicious package from the initial disclosure to the end of the removal of the malicious code. It takes days or even weeks or months. We have seen every timelines, but we have seen malicious package that the dwell time, the total time where the malicious package was in the registry was weeks. So you need to be aware of any potential malware early. So we are not shifting left; we are shifting near in time from the moment where the malicious package is published in the public repository. This is one approach. There are another approach. For example, Derek, I think is talking about firewalling, about taking a wide list of recognized, trusted dependencies that they are okay, versions that are properly validated, and then if you want to move, you have to recheck. You have to perform a new analysis of the new version to ensure that this is in the white list. So you don't accept any software. You just follow a white list. I think this is another good approach. There are other different ones. For example, you can instrument in a sandbox. Someone mentioned the sandbox. You can sandbox the execution or the installation of the packages to see what's happening, what's doing. And with anomaly detection, you can check if the behavior changes from the expected one, from the normal one. If there is a difference, you have enough evidence to perhaps remove that package version as non-trusted. There are different approaches, but I think that no single organization can fight this threat. This is an industry that is getting a lot of money, draining a lot of money from the normal businesses, not the legal ones, and the fight is must. We mentioned before the XC attack, the backdoor. This is raising a lot of reviews about how open source should be done with the same ease of use, but with more trust on the results. And this is not an easy problem to solve.
Thank you very much, Luis.
I'm sorry. I have many ideas and.
Fantastic, guys. Maybe we can schedule another new slot to continue discussing on this idea. So thank you very much, Derek, Avilasha. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for everybody attending this webinar. Sorry again for not being able to actually be on live, but we are attending you in the chat to answer any of your questions. A pleasure. See you in the next webinar.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.